Hello everybody and welcome back to the new inaugural A Winner Is You podcast. As ever, my name is David, and as ever, sitting 300 miles across from me is Mr. Alex Aldridge. How are you doing today, Alex?
Hello, sir. Happy New Year.
New Year? Oh yeah, so it is Happy New Year. Did I manage to miss that
2021 begins with the exhumation of the corpse of A Winner Is You.
Exhumation is the word. I think we've gone down to the graveyard, dug up this stinking rotten corpse covered in maggots, dusted it off
like Hulk Hogan.
Yeah,
for some reason.
Given it a Glasgow shower, and then
what's a Glasgow shower?
Deodorant.
Oh, okay, fine. Right, that's not
Just
too bad.
Sprayed it down, made it smell nice, and tried to hide a bit of the rotten, sapping pus dripping off of the corpse, and we're back. How long is it since we've done a Winner Is You podcast?
Under the name of A Winner Is You?
Yeah.
Well, I don't even know, because the previous one was seemingly under our network of A Winner Is You, but was called Gamertron. So, I don't know. We must have... Why? I don't even know why we gave it up. Did we lose the URL or something?
Yeah, I think I accidentally let the URL lapse, and then they wanted us to pay thousands of pounds to get a new one.
That's how you know you've made it, mate.
Yeah.
When somebody's trying to charge you thousands to exist on the internet, you know you've made it.
Yeah, we made the big time.
Yeah, it was stupid, right? Last night I was playing a game with my wife, and it was like a "How well do you know me" game, and it was something like "Have you ever met a famous person?" And I said to her, like, depending on how many actual famous people you've met, it might actually be me. Just considering, like, a few, like 20 or 30 people have probably heard me do a podcast, it could be me.
You are. Oh, you're not in St. Neots anymore. You're St. Neots, ex-St. Neots' biggest social media star.
No. I know somebody else who's bigger than me.
Oh, there's that guy that was on Gamer... What was that video game website? Gamer? I'll keep what I try to call it. Gamertron.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no, that was Video Gamer. Oh, yeah, but there's another guy I know who is... he was on, like, Sky News and CNN.
Oh,
He met Miyamoto. I mean...
Yeah, you've got a long way to go to...
I carpet bombed his house after that. So
yeah,
that problem solved itself.
But we are back in earnest. We might be rotten, we might be stinking, we might be oozing pus, but we're still here, still swinging. Both of us significantly more bald than we were last time we did a Winner Is You podcast. But we're here. Do you want to give us give the listener a rundown on what this new podcast format is going to take the shape of?
Yeah, I think. Largely, every time we start doing a new podcast, we kind of change what the format is or the formula. So
you might say we're the Ricky Gervais of video game podcasting.
We've definitely come back with a modesty intact.
Yeah.
So far, I'm the most famous St. Neots resident of all time, and we're the Ricky Gervais of video game podcast. So this time around, in our previous guys as Gamertron, we would do quite a lot of we did like best game of a certain year, didn't we? We were doing all of the years from about 95 onwards, and when we'd come to our number one game, we do a sort of game club episode. And I think listening back or thinking back on them, we didn't really know how to set those out with a proper format. So this time we're going to try and do an entire podcast around being a game club podcast. But we're also going to mix in every other week some kind of ranking or list or best of or ranking a franchise or whatever. So as we haven't had time yet to play an entire game simultaneously, we're going to start off today with a special top 10 list that I will let
top
David
10 lists,
explain.
and then at the end of this we'll decide what game we're doing next. Is that right? I think we already have decided, have we?
Yes, we have. Yes.
So we'll announce that, and then we'll come back next pod and talk about that.
Yeah, so we'll talk about our memories, we'll talk about what we like, what we dislike, we'll go through a sort of a run through of the game together, sort of the major either set pieces or moments or story beats or areas, depending on what type of game it is. I guess we're going to always sort of try and aim for something that has a relatively not linear structure, but a story structure that we can follow together and discuss.
Yes.
So we do play a lot of online games and stuff together, but you can't really do a whole hour and a half on
it's
Overwatch,
tough.
I guess, unless you just want to talk about
tough.
Reaper being emo. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess like podcasts like that would just descend into comparing how it's evolved season to season, but then that's maybe not interesting.
And yeah, I mean, some of these you're talking about. You have to play them for years or several concurrent months to actually understand what's going on. So if you haven't done that, then you won't be able to follow, and it will just be giving a history lesson to fill in the blanks for people, and that's not the point of that, I guess.
No. So I guess to move on to this one, we've arbitrarily, I suppose, chosen the top 10 video games of the generation that has just come to pass. So yeah, what we're going to do is we're going to run down our favourite games of the last generation, try and fit them into some sort of top 10 order, and then rank them, coming up with the definitive I Want to Review game of the generation for the PS4, Xbox One, and what are we doing Nintendo-wise?
I think we've just counted the Switch.
The Switch.
Although I suppose Wii U was technically around during that period of time as well, but I don't think
there's no games on it, so we don't need to worry about it.
Oh, there was as well.
Or was there?
Yeah. Oh, shit. Now we have to figure out if we're counting that in or not, because it also technically exists on the Switch. Oh, screw it. I'm sticking it in.
It's going in. What is it?
It'll be Bayonetta 2.
There's some live list editing going on right here. Is it making your top 10?
It probably would do, yeah.
Oh, no. Get it in there. Does that mean... so I'm looking at Alex's list here. Does that mean Nier Automata is getting binned off?
Yeah.
Goodbye, Nier. We hardly knew ye.
We really did.
Which is fine, because I've never played Nier, so that saves me on a game that I've not played. Oh, it's shooting straight up the list.
It's just because I completely forgot about it. Damn cheeky Wii U.
Although I said that's good because I've never played Nier, but you've also replaced it with a game I've also not played, so didn't improve things for me.
No.
But we've had almost 8 minutes now, so let's get onto it. So I think what we did before this podcast is we made sort of an exhaustive list of games that we thought might be included on a list, and then before we started recording, we've gone through and we've sort of highlighted a top 14. Which we're going to then cut down to 10 and then order. So the ones that didn't make the list, we'll have a quick run through just now and just give them an honourable mention, have a quick what's good about them chat, and then move on.
Yeah. So I mean, we can just go from the top. They're not in any order, I think. So we can probably I could probably give Nier Automata a little Automata. I don't even know how.
Yeah, let's start with Nier since it's already been mentioned. What was so good about Nier that it's not one of the top 10 games of the generation?
So. From what I remember, this is a follow-on from the Yoko Taro Square RPG that was on PS3 and Xbox 360. I think they're remaking that as well. But this one wasn't developed by the same people. So this one, the development process went to Platinum Games, who, for most of the last generation, were almost sort of spotless. Certainly, maybe more on the 360 era when they were making games like Bayonetta and Vanquish. In the last generation they had a couple of misses. I think some licensed games like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles wasn't too great. They did a Transformers one as well, but the gameplay of this is sort of peak Platinum. It's a hack and slash kind of, Devil May Cry-esque action game, but it's also got a lot of other weird touches in it. There's some sort of kind of like shoot 'em up sections in it, and you have a little robot friend around you that you sort of, so while you're fighting he can shoot guns at everybody for you, but this is also kind of a really deep existential sort of thought-provoking RPG on top of all of that. It's very anime-ass game. There's a lot of robots becoming sentient, and what does it mean to not be a real person but want to, and all this kind of stuff. So the story was decent, and it absolutely carried me through it, but it's not going to blow anybody's socks off. But just in terms of one of my favorite developers with their style, and then added to that the madness of this sort of auteur that Yoko Taro is, kind of made Nier a really special one of Platinum's games. It might even be one of my favourite ones they've ever done.
Okay. The Platinum game that always appealed to me was Vanquish. I feel like if there's any of them that are going to get me, it's that one. Yeah,
that is. And I have gone and played that on the version that they re-released. I think it was this year. 2020. Is it the 10th anniversary one? Something like that. Anyway, there's a Vanquish and Bayonetta sort of double pack that you got, where they both sort of upscale both the games and put them in 60 frames per second.
Oh, brilliant!
So I tried to play Vanquish with that, and it's still just absolute madness. It's so sort of reaction and skill based that it takes quite a while to kind of learn how to play that effectively and not get frustrated thinking it's a bad game.
Okay.
It's one that you really have to kind of delve into before you kind of get it. But that's one I would definitely recommend. That one's going to go in our Xbox 360 top 100 for sure.
Well, it's just because it's on the list and it helps me keep track of it in my head. Devil May Cry 5. Tell me about that.
You didn't play that?
I played it very, very briefly. So I think I'm afraid you're going to have to do the heavy lifting on this one also. It's I look at Devil May Cry 5 and think this is a very Alex game.
Yeah. Yeah, which is probably why games like Nier and Bayonetta and It were all in my provisional list. Devil May Cry 5 is part of this whole sort of Capcom renaissance that we seem to be going through at the moment, where in the last maybe 2 years or so, they really seem to have done justice to almost every single franchise that people care about with them. Monster Hunter World was amazing. I haven't even written that in here. Mega Man 11 was a return to form for that series. A kind of a surprise when everyone thought it was basically going to be Mighty Number 9 version 2. They did all the Resident Evil games that they've done in the last generation, the remakes in Resident Evil 7, and then this, which is just an outstanding action video game. It's I don't think there'd be too many arguments based on, even if you look back with sort of rose-tinted glasses, I don't think a lot of people are going to argue that Devil May Cry 5 is not the best in the series. I'm a big fan of the first one. 4 was also good. I think we both played and enjoyed the DMC one that everyone hated, did we?
That's right, yeah. I actually think time's been kind to that game.
Yeah,
as in once people have got their rage at the emoification of the main character out of the way, actually people look back quite fondly on that game.
Yeah, I think they do. Obviously, this one brought us back to normal Dante, I guess, that everybody would want with the white hair and whatever. But he's not the only character that you play as. I think you play as 3 characters in the game. So you've got Dante, you've got Virgil. I think it's Virgil. Nero. And this new character called V, who's like a weird sort of emo band member, goth guy, who doesn't really do a lot of fighting himself, but he has these like sort of shadow monster things that he can call upon to fight for him, and it's almost like becomes a weird sort of tactics game at that point. But the core parts of playing as Dante again is exactly what anybody who loves the franchise or who's played any of the older games and wants a modern version of them, that's everything they would want from it is in Devil May Cry 5. Some of the weapons are ridiculous. I think there's one where it's like a motorbike that you can then split in half and it turns into like chainsaw style weapons that you like smash people with. The story is obviously batshit insane. It's still campy, it's still quippy. Some of the characters kind of pissed me off in it, which probably is why it's not as high as some of the other games we're going to talk about later. But as a fan of Devil May Cry, like I say, this is the best one by far. And it was just such a really solid and exciting and fun action game with great bosses, really tight combat, and it looks beautiful as well because it's quite a later game in this list.
Absolutely. I know you mentioned it being a good version of a Devil May Cry game. So another one of those that hasn't quite made the list is Tetris Effect. I just think that's an absolutely fantastic version of a Tetris game.
I couldn't agree more.
It's utterly beautiful. I played through that solid for a whole weekend recently, and I just had the time of my life with it. Absolutely adore that game. Even it's just a shame that the online community seems to have died away, because even the online modes are quite fun. The competitive modes are brilliant, and you can't talk about Tetris Effect without talking about those trippy as hell visuals. It's just there's something. It's unreal. Is the only way I can think to say it, and I think it's maybe my favourite version of Tetris I've played in a long time.
It'd be hard to disagree with that. It's funny because if you actually sit back and look at your screen and you look at how much of the real estate is actually being taken up by Tetris itself, it's a really small amount. It's almost like a tenth of the screen, maybe.
Yeah.
while all of this crazy stuff's going on around it, I haven't really played the online, but I definitely played a lot of the. Every time I go on there now, if I've played something that's really sort of taxing or really sort of strenuous, like an online shooter or whatever, if I go into that and stick on the chill marathon, it's a really good way to kind of end a game session and just before you like hit the sack, stick some headphones in, hear the music.
I very much enjoy the music of Tetris Effect. It's good.
Yeah, it's really good, especially how it kind of it's not exactly the most groundbreaking sort of introduction to a game in terms of it changing the music with when you're placing the Tetris pieces in. You know, games like Rez or whatever have lived on that before, but it doesn't mean that it diminishes how good it actually is and how well implemented that is. The fact that you're basically making a song by playing Tetris. Yeah,
absolutely. I'm looking forward to seeing. So the next game on our list that we're going to talk about is Hitman 2. I am very much looking forward to seeing what these guys, IO Interactive, do with the James Bond franchise that they've picked up, because Hitman is almost like a schlocky comedic anti-Bond, and it's a developer that seems to know what they have and embrace the silliness of Hitman in a way that I hadn't seen in previous games. I remember playing one that came out in the Xbox 360, and now I'm forgetting what it's called, but
Absolution, was it?
I think that's maybe the right one, but it took itself very seriously, which was a shame, because it did have the silliness in it. And then I remember the final boss was like a boss battle where you had to sneak around and then sneak attack this guy and then run away again into the bushes and then come back and sneak him again. It was so silly, whereas this game just knows what it is and does it really, really well. It's also almost a shame, I think, that they seem to have moved away from the model of releasing content throughout the year, because I think the way that the game is set up to encourage players to explore environments, it would be nice to see them return in Hitman 3, which is out very soon actually, to the, and I don't think they are, I think they're just going to release the whole game. I like the way that they did Hitman 1 and released it piecemeal, and I could see playing Hitman 2 how, say they gave you a month or 2 months to play one area, to really dig into it, get to know the map, get to know the routes and the routines of the AI, and really just sort of try to abuse it to explore everything it's got. I found that when I eventually got into Hitman 2, because I bounced off it a few times before I got into it, when I eventually got into it, it was just picking a level and just spending the day on it, rather than doing it and moving on, doing it and moving on. It was really just pick a level and just sit and work through it until you sort of lose interest and then move on to the next one. Ultimately, that I think is probably why, well, one, you bounced off it, but two, why it wouldn't make my list is that because of the way you had to play it, or the way I had to play it to get enjoyment from it, it meant that I burnt out on it. Oh, so sure. I've played like the first 3 levels a lot, and then I've barely touched the rest of it, which is a shame. But I think I'm about ready to move on from Hitman 2 and just wait for Hitman 3 and try and play it from the beginning. Hopefully I can come at it with some fresh eyes and make a bit more from it. But it really is, it's a nice story, Hitman, because it's a IO almost went bust numerous occasions, and they've managed to now find their independence and move forward with a series that really seems to be finding its feet, which is promising and nice to see, especially in a year which a lot of companies are going to the wall, and we just see AAA development just getting bigger and bigger. It's just nice to see a company operate within a space that is slightly smaller but also enjoy it at the same time.
They totally resurrected the series, as you say. Mm-hmm. It's just a shame that, as you pointed out, it appears to have been more of a marketing tool to gain interest in this sort of reboot of the franchise, rather than an ongoing long-term strategy to release it piecemeal. But I know that in the third game they are you can play 1 and 2 in that as well, can't you? So.
Oh, really? That's brilliant.
Yeah,
that
so all 3 of the games will again be available from within the one hub. So it seems like a good place to start. And I think the only problem I ever really had with Hitman is that I just wanted to be having somebody else in the room with me to enjoy the silliness of it together, because just when you're on your own and you're just stumbling around and failing at the stealth sections, it's less fun than it would be if you were to play it with a mate and try and figure out how to tackle a mission together. So, if we ever manage to get out of this lockdown Corona situation and we can visit each other again, this seems like a perfect couch co-op game for the two of us.
Absolutely, yeah. I've had a lot of fun doing exactly that. I actually think we should probably invest some real effort into finding a streaming setup that works with our bad internet connections, because even just sitting down on a Friday night with a beer or two and watching each other taking turns and playing this game is going to be a fantastic experience. But talking about resurrected series, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2, what a game.
Perfect. This is one of the most perfect remasters I think I've ever played.
Yeah. And they did it. They had to do some certain things, like they had to modernize the controls to make this a compelling product, in my opinion. They had to modernize the controls and they had to get the music right, and they did both.
Yeah, they did.
It's just, the series has had so many false starts over the years with failed remakes, and maybe the series losing its way with, like, Tony, what is it, Pro Skater 8 or something, the one with the balance board.
Oh, that
and
was
then
Ride and yeah.
That's it. And Project 8 was when they tried to turn it into Skate.
Yeah.
Which was okay, but it wasn't what people play Tony Hawk for. But this is sort of a return to form, and I'd actually like to see them build this out into a platform. Go away and remake 3 and 4 or Thug and release it within that world for DLC, and I am all in.
Yeah, and that's you would hope that is part of the reason why they added all the new elements that they added in for 3 and 4 to this remake, so that it's basically ready-made to just lob those games into this engine and have them work in exactly the same way. Because other than the fact that I remembered how insanely difficult it can get at times, it can be sort of thumb-crushingly difficult platforming-wise to try and get those stupid secret tapes or whatever, and you can really bang your head against it for a while. I know that we both had moments of that when we were playing, and I had to send you videos of me doing certain things to show you how to do it and whatever. But as far as, they didn't put a foot wrong with it. And there was a serious worry about it, because although it was a different developer this time, it was back to Vicarious Visions, I think, wasn't it? Rather than Robomodo, who basically killed the franchise with 5 and the previous remake, which again is reason why people were worried that the first remake of Tony Hawk's, whatever it was, Skater HD on the 360 was dreadful. So to come out of it with such a perfect, reverential, and sort of kind of a game that captured the spirit of the original so well is a real testament to everybody involved in it. Tony must be loving it.
Oh, absolutely. And he... like you're right, that HD remake, and then they followed that up with Tony Hawk 5, didn't they? Which was just god awful. But we're here. But Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2 really could be the start of something good again for the series, and I can't wait.
Yeah, it's a real feel good thing for this year, that game.
Exactly. Gone Home was probably moving on. Gone Home was probably the first of sort of the so-called walking simulators that came and hit the big time. But Firewatch is the first one that I remember really capturing my interest, and I absolutely loved that story. I wish I played it. I found the character so relatable. Essentially, it's a story about a man that has a wife, a dog, a family, a house. He's got the perfect life that he wants, and then his wife gets diagnosed with early life dementia and has to be taken into care, and he just doesn't deal with it well whatsoever. And he's a flawed character. He's not like what a lot of, I guess a lot of places make the main character meant to be very likable, so that obviously if you're controlling them.
Yeah, like a Mary Sue kind of character.
Yeah, exactly. But this one, he makes mistakes, and he essentially just can't deal with what's going on in his life, so he runs away to be a fire watchman in the middle of the woods. And he kind of develops this relationship with another person, and it just kind of explores him coming to terms with what's happened in his life, as well as exploring a new relationship with someone else.
And this person is, I obviously haven't played it, but they're primarily on the other end of a walkie-talkie, right? They're
only on. I think you meet them at the very end. Yeah. But at the very end of the game, but you don't actually see anyone at any point. So this person, you can, it's almost like having a sort of phone romance, and this person becomes something in his head, and that she maybe isn't. And vice versa, and they use each other for company and companionship, but eventually it comes to an end. And it's just such a moving, relatable tale. Not relatable in the way that I've got lived experience of it, but I can see how people get to a point in their life where they can't deal with things, and maybe they would perhaps run away from it rather than trying to deal with it. And it's just a nice human, honest tale that I really enjoyed, and think it's one of the better walking simulators.
Yeah, I think I'd really like to give it a go. Especially it's got I think Rich Sommer does the voice of the main character, and he's from I really enjoyed him in Mad Men, which I'm actually rewatching at the moment with my wife.
Oh, excellent!
So yeah, I've heard really good things about his performance in the game as well. To me, it must be if you found it so relatable and human.
Absolutely, it's amazing. Another game which I didn't perhaps feel like I don't understand the story quite as much as Inside, but what a game that is!
Yeah. Really difficult to have a sequel to a game as beloved and as unique as Limbo and make it feel distinct enough but familiar enough to be for fans of that game, and also be fresh enough to enjoy for new people and people who haven't played it for a very long time. You're right though, I have absolutely no idea what goes on in that game, and the ending of it is just madder than a box of frogs.
Oh, it's absolutely insane, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. It's almost it starts off as a game to sort of escape, doesn't it? And then it becomes like an infiltration game by the end.
Yeah.
But a really easy one where everyone just kind of stands around and watches you do it.
Yeah, what an odd game. But yeah, absolutely, like atmospheric, like
terrifying
oozes with atmosphere, terrifying, like really, really, really powerful. And if you haven't played it yet, go get it. Talking about though, like, I don't know how to link this one, but Outer Worlds, it's a good Fallout game, isn't it?
Your segues have been pretty good so far. I think you've done a hell of a job. Especially just a completely randomised list. I haven't played... This is Outer Wilds, right? So I haven't played this one. I know...
Outer Wilds. Oh, okay. Right. I until the end of time, I'm going to get Outer Wilds and Outer Worlds confused. Outer Wilds is a good Fallout, isn't it?
No, that's Outer Worlds.
Oh, see, did it again. Okay, so Outer Wilds is the run-based, first-person, planetary hopping game, right?
Yeah. Which, I don't know, I almost feel like some types of games like this, I don't know, maybe I'm just getting old, or I'm just losing my attention span, but I feel overwhelmed to even start trying it. Like I just won't know what to do, and I will immediately get frustrated and stop wanting to play it. But as far as I'm aware, if you push through that and you actually start to uncover things by yourself, it can be really revelatory and really interesting.
It's an odd experience in 2020 to have a game that doesn't give you direction, doesn't hold your hand, just says, here's the world, off you go. And you're like, well, where do I go from here? So you find a thread and you sort of just pull at it until you're satisfied, which is, I think, like, I kept hearing this a lot in games coverage. It became a bit of an annoyance to me, but it was a bit like what's that word that became really, really prevalent in video game vernacular? Visceral. After a while, the word just stopped meaning anything. So I kept hearing this game described as you play it till you're satisfied, so you can't actually really complete it. You just play it until you feel like you've discovered all you want or can from the world, and then you move on. And that is unusual in 2020. In a game that is in games industries today that is wanting you to see everything, experience everything, and make sure that you're playing things the right way, probably to push you towards microtransactions. This game is happy just to leave you alone and just let you explore, which is nice.
What's the time limit for it? For every go?
Oh, now you're asking me to pull some. I think it's 20 minutes, but I may not be right. I may be wrong there.
Yeah, see, that kind of gives me anxiety even thinking about that from the start. 20 minutes and then it starts all over again. But
yeah.
I suppose does it eventually ever try and push you anywhere at all? Did you ever get to that stage, or did you just find that you were discovering things at a decent enough pace that you didn't need to seek help, or it didn't need to give you any?
There is a mission sort of list of sorts. So there's a thing in your computer on your ship where you can see what you've discovered. And you then use that to go back and sort of it helps direct you if you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed by that, and gives you something to work on until you feel like you've sort of got the stabilizers. You can take them off and you can go off on your own and do your own thing. But there is a thing of sorts, but there's no explicit you've completed a mission, move on to the next one thing.
Yeah.
Titanfall 2, Alex. This is a game that I suspect would have made my top 10 if I had played it, but I haven't.
Yeah, this, and I don't want, because this is our redemption podcast doesn't mean we should use that word all the time, but it feels like it's almost relevant for this game as well, because the first Titanfall must have been really close to the original launch of the Xbox One. I remember it.
I think it was a launch title, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. And obviously that did feel quite rushed, certainly in terms of the fact that it had really no story campaign. It had a campaign, but that was basically just online matches anyway.
Yeah.
So with Titanfall 2, clearly, and the biggest sort of boon for this game is how well the developers took that on board and decided to actually go ahead and make a full-on single-player campaign. And it's one of the best shooter campaigns I think I've ever played. Certainly of this last generation. Some of the mechanics that they have in it are sort of spectacular and really inventive as well. So obviously you've got a lot of implementation of the Titans themselves, the mechs that you can call down. There's a lot of the parkour as well that goes into it. You have sort of big boss fights with other mechs, which are really fun. They have a lot of sort of personality. Each one's different from the other one. And it has some really crazy sort of time travel mechanic that it throws in halfway through the game, where it's having scenarios where you will be in a building and you can be surrounded by a group of guards trying to kill you. You can then flick this thing on your time travel watch device, go forward in time to a period where all those guards are no longer there because they've all gone, walk to the other side of the room, then go back in time again and be stood with everyone with you at their back to you and shoot them all in the back, because you're able to maneuver through locked doors or get yourself some strategic positioning based off of flicking forward in time and then flicking back again and surprising everybody and shooting them all in the back. It's so well done. There's so much invention in that campaign that it's fantastic. Even the actual story was pretty good. The first one was a little bit kind of oorah Call of Duty style soldiery stuff, whereas this one, they tried to give a personality to a robot and a man, and like a friendship between the two of them, and it actually did work out quite nicely.
Yeah, and it just shows you Vince Zampella knows what he's doing. He was the brain behind Call of Duty Modern Warfare, which redefined the shooter genre, and then he left Activision, it was Activision, and then he made Respawn, who then sort of redefined movement in first-person shooters that I think we're still feeling today. And then again, absolutely, with Apex Legends, with their movement, and they have games like Fortnite. I mean, Fortnite are known to be happy to copy anyone, but they copy them in terms of things like the respawn beacons and things like that. So like, it's just the boy must just be an unbelievable brain for shooters. Yeah,
it's just the biggest shame with it. The multiplayer in this game is also really, really good as well. The biggest shame, as people may remember, is that EA did it a real dirty and just brought it out basically the same time as they brought Battlefield.
Yeah, what a mess.
1, I can't remember which version of Battlefield it was, but one of those games, and they just completely buried it. And it deserved so much more credit and recognition than it got. But
absolutely,
that campaign I'm sure would hold up really well if you tried it now.
I actually downloaded it last night, so I'm hopefully going to get to it soon. But it's the movement for me is always key. But another game that lives and dies on its ability to control things is Celeste. Because if that game didn't feel great, or load quickly, that would be nothing to that game. But it's another fantastic outing of a genre that's quite popular these days. There's quite a lot of games in that area operating within that space, and Celeste has got to be one of the better ones.
Oh, definitely.
Really tough platformers.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's the dash mechanic, isn't it? Really, that makes that game feel as fluid and as fun as it does. I think one of the reasons I wouldn't have put this in my top 10, despite really, really enjoying it, even though it does get just brutally hard by the end,
it really
is that
does.
I know it got a lot of praise and recognition for its story and its message, but I don't think it did it as sort of subtly or as artistically as a lot of people seem to think it did. And I don't think games have really managed to do that at all yet. When you're talking about things like mental illness or depression or whatever it was, that they wanted to hammer onto is almost like a metaphor for what was going on. It just seemed a little bit too signposted to me. It didn't. It just seemed really obvious that, oh, okay, so this sort of shadow version of my character is clearly her depressive mindset trying to chase her down.
Yeah, very much on the nose.
Yes, exactly. That's what I was. Yeah, exactly what I was trying to say. But as an actual game, outside of that, it was fantastic. I mean, what other games that have done 2D platforming have got as close to that in terms of how sort of fluid and tight it felt? I mean, it's better than some Mario and Sonic games for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. The only game I'm trying to think that I would compare it to would be that, and now I'm blanking on it because I was hoping I would remember it as I was speaking, but that top-down shooting game where you die, if you get shot once you die.
Oh, Hotline Miami.
Yeah, that's it. I would liken it almost to that in that it's brutally difficult, fast-paced, no messing about, and I just think although it's a different type of game, it rings a lot of the same bells to me.
Yeah, although it's kind of still really fast, it's almost like a slightly more chilled out Super Meat Boy as well. I think.
Yeah.
A game that just lives and dies on its mechanics and its platforming and lives quite nicely.
Yes, exactly. And a game that allows you to respawn at will. But moving on to another game made by Respawn, which is in addition to Titanfall 2.
Hang on, wait a minute.
Talking about on the nose.
Wait a minute, this is Remedy, isn't it?
Oh, for goodness sakes. Well, you remedied my error.
Yes.
Then we'll move on to Control, which is a game that I know fine well I'll like, but I haven't played it.
Have you not? Oh, okay.
No. I've had it downloaded on my Xbox for about 6 months, thinking I need to get to this because I like Alan Wake, and still haven't done it.
Oh, it's far better than Alan Wake. That's a guarantee. Control, one of the biggest issues I had with Control was that it just ran like shite on PS4. I would have preferred to have played it on Xbox at the time because I know that was the better version, but I'm pretty sure for GoombaStomp I actually got the review copy on the PS4.
Okay.
It's kind of like what Quantum Break should really have been. It's clearly what they were intending to do with Quantum Break when they made that game with all these psychic powers mixed with a third-person shooter. Obviously, that game killed itself with its horrendously hokey and wooden live-action sequences that just killed everything going on in that game.
That came from the time that when Microsoft spun up their own television studio to go alongside the Xbox One release, right?
Yep. Yeah.
And that was probably the only thing that ever came out of it as well.
Yeah, I think that was probably when they were trying to build this more of a multimedia machine than they are now. They were still in that phase. But Quantum Break also it felt kind of really janky and slippery. It never really felt tight enough for me. I felt like I didn't, and this is going to sound really terrible, I didn't have enough control as I was playing it. But Control itself, the powers that it's got in it and the way that it plays are all fantastic, and it's a really fun game to just mess around in and experiment with how you can dispatch enemies. And it does get quite difficult by the end. But the coolest thing about Control, far and away, is the setting and the way that the story is this sort of weird Twin Peaks kind of mystery that's going on.
Seems to be what Remedy do well.
Yeah, exactly. And this one, it's all set inside this kind of institute for this sort of kinetic power that your character controls or has. And as the facility's getting more and more run down by enemies and monsters and things, you can sort of see the remnants of the experiments that they were trying to create. And there's lots of that sort of signature Remedy extracurricular narrative that's going on around you, where TVs are playing clips of scientists talking about their experiments, and you've got all these tapes to listen to and documents to read, and it's really fascinating. It's one of those games where exploring and finding out the kind of hidden lore of it is really rewarding.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Alongside a really fun game to play and mess about with. Yeah,
which is probably the best I can come up with for the hard shift onto Rocket League we're about to do. It's sort of the PlayStation Plus darling. There's probably been bigger games out on PS Plus since then, but this was the one that really sort of hit the big time because of PlayStation Plus and has really gone from strength to strength. I think now they've got season passes. It's a free to play game now, and they've got season passes, much like the Battle Royale genre.
Is it an esport at this point?
I think they must. If it's not, they must want it to be.
Yeah, I mean, Rocket League was massive. It shouldn't be, especially during the time it was free on PS Plus. But that certainly did not translate to anything like a lack of sales or interest in the product on other platforms, because it just went absolutely wild. And it was, we played this so much.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, and we were all saying, it's the best football game of the whole generation, and all this kind of stuff. It was so addictive. But I think the problem with Rocket League, as with anything like this, is that you need to kind of stay on it. Otherwise, I mean, I've some guys I work with now in my latest job. They are insanely good at it. And I remember them saying, let's have a game of Rocket League. And I said, I used to love that. I used to be pretty good. And just, when they're doing all air juggling and dribbling it around and backflip goals and all this kind of stuff, you realise that it's not the game it was when it was on PS Plus, because on PS Plus it was this kind of messy, hectic game where no one was really that good at it. So everyone was having a right old laugh. It doesn't matter. But now you've got some absolute psychic pros at it. And it's just, it's you'll just get really disheartened if you go in totally cold now.
Tell me about Persona 5.
Persona 5. So this is obviously the continuation of Atlas's JRPG set, half in a school life sort of sim and half as a dungeon, almost like a dungeon crawling, just standard turn-based JRPG. Characterization in it is really good for the type of game that it is. So it could go sort of full-on wacky anime, but it doesn't. It kind of reins itself in. They're always dark, these games, because it's always dealing with sort of things of your persona is like an encapsulation of your inner feelings and thoughts. So, again, going towards the Celeste end of the scale, if you're a depressive sort of person, you've got this really evil persona that you have to then defeat before you can take control of it. People are actually getting killed in real life because of things that happen in this shadow world. It's bringing everybody in the city of Tokyo down, but it's all, this game really is all about the style, even the menu systems and the UIs and the interfaces of it are all so cool to look at. The setting of the going in and out of Tokyo, actually taking trains to different parts of Tokyo, is really cool. The monster design is excellent. It's just a super long and involved game that you really have to sink your teeth into for over 100 hours, I think, to beat it. But I never really felt like it wasn't constantly rewarding me for carrying on playing it. You're meeting new characters, you're getting new party members, you're getting more personas that you can power up. You can kind of mesh your personas together to create these all powerful ones. Each kind of new character you meet, you have to go into their realm to defeat their persona, and they're all completely different settings. You've got like palaces and government buildings, and they're all kind of made, their sort of thought process is made real. So it's a really kind of out there series in general. But even the school simulator stuff is quite fun. You've got to do tests and exams, and you've got to go to get exercise and build your character's personality up at the same time as building up your fighting ability. So it's it's a really cool one, but it's just one that takes a lot of time to get into, and it's definitely not going to be for everyone. But stylistically, absolutely fantastic.
You're talking about style, and you set me up beautifully for this one. But this is a controversial opinion, but I think this is an example of a game that is all style, no substance. Tell me a bit about your feelings on Ghost of Tsushima.
Yeah, it's definitely all style and repeated substance. That's for sure. I feel like this game...
I mean, I don't want to come across too harsh about it, and I haven't completed the game. I've played a good chunk of it, but my feeling on this is that it's a bog standard open world game that, because you've put the PlayStation exclusive tag on it, people are just getting overly excited about. It's a good open world game, but it's just that is it. But people seem to think it's the second coming, so
we've had a dearth of things to really get excited about this year.
Yeah.
So, especially as it's an exclusive, as you say, it's getting more credence than it deserves. There are so many things to like about the game, and I don't necessarily think the combat of it is one of those things that you would exclude from that, because to play it is fun. It is fun to do the samurai kills when you've got the showdowns going on with people. Getting more and more samurai and stealth ninja tools is really fun. The world itself is absolutely beautiful. The story, I think, is good, and the acting from all the people who are in it. I think that you can either do a Japanese dub or you can do an English dub, but all the actors in it are Asian. So you've
excellent.
got actually sort of Mongolian people and Japanese people or whatever, or at least Japanese American people.
At least that means you're not getting annoying accents.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, which weirdly gives it an authenticity to it that it shouldn't really have, because it's weird because if you play it with the Japanese dub, it's dubbing it over the English mouth syncing, so it's really weird to see it that way around. It's like you don't ever see like English things dubbed into other languages unless you're from another country from us. But yeah, unfortunately it does devolve somewhat into a bit of a box ticking exercise with things on the map that you just have to go do the same thing, like chase a fox over and over and over again. I did get the platinum on it because clearly there was not much else to do this year, but unfortunately it should have been more of a linear game. I don't know. It didn't need to be an open world game. It could really have focused itself better and been a much better experience than it was when it ended up being a bit bloated and a bit overly long.
Yeah, and I think at this point, if people play video games, I would suspect they know what to expect from a game like this. But talking about the next one is an utter enigma. And I'm actually kind of glad it's not made the top 10, because then we would have had to have a discussion. Is this a game or is this a demo?
Yeah.
PT.
Yes. Almost by name, it's a playable teaser. So yeah, I guess you're kind of right in that it's not really a full game.
Yeah, and I think actually when you start picking it apart, it's an extremely effective marketing tool for a product that never came to pass.
Yeah, which is the real shame of all of it.
Yeah. It's just this sort of corridor horror game that is kind of Resident Evil-ish, kind of Silent Hill-ish, kind of its own thing.
Yeah, it feels like a bit of Outlast is in there and things like that as well.
But I think there's few horror games of that ilk that are as evocative and as atmospheric as PT, even if it wasn't a proper game.
Yeah. The thing I like the most about PT is, aside from this, the mystery around it, where people... I think at the time I played this, there wasn't really a definitive way to actually beat it. Yeah. People weren't entirely sure how they were actually getting to the end. It was still it had that real sort of mystique about it, that it became this kind of urban legend rather than a fully defined, here's a walkthrough of the game. You actually had to experiment, and people were having actual discussions around how to beat it.
Which is likely manufactured and is likely deliberate, which the people that made Resident Evil 7 tried to emulate in a way by releasing that demo with the finger.
Yeah.
But the problem is when they did that is they had to patch the ending in. So like when you actually got the first thing, it wasn't completable until they patched it. Yeah. Whereas PT, in this weird, enigmatic, fully fledged, cohesive thing, was all there from the beginning. And it's a shame we never saw what that was going to be, because based on that tech demo, it was fantastic.
Yeah. I don't even think I just went on a complete tangent a minute ago. But yeah, the thing that I liked the most about it was a horror game without really any overly pressing danger that you're aware of at the time you're playing it. You don't really have to fight. You don't really have to run away and hide, which can get that's been totally overdone, I think, in this generation. The whole, it's a survival horror game, but you can't fight back and everyone kills you straight away, so you got to hide under loads of beds. That wasn't really part of what this game was. It was just really, really moody and really dark and confusing. And psychologically, it was trying to do all these crazy things to you to just kind of unnerve you. But there was never really that many fail states in the game. And that's what I loved the most about it. It was a game where you're not really sure what's making it so scary, other than it's just this really weird experience that...
It's a video game equivalent of walking down a dark alley feeling like someone's watching you when actually no one's watching you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But Cuphead, the next game, may be my favourite looking game ever.
I think Cuphead is my favourite game that I hate of all time.
Yeah, that's a good description.
I haven't beaten it. I just can't. It's just too much.
I think I've got to the boss before King Dice, so I'm fairly close to the end.
I think I did King Dice, but the one after that is the devil, right?
That's right, yeah.
I can't do him, I think, as far as I can remember. But oh my god, yeah, visually, as you alluded to there, just outstanding. Just completely another level of artistry in video games, that just actually hand drawing an entire game and have it look as authentic and beautiful as that is a masterpiece. It's just
And it's just even worse that when the developers started, they couldn't draw like that. They just decided to teach themselves.
Really?
Yeah, they just thought, oh, this would be cool for a game, so they learned how to do it. It's just like, okay, I wish I was that talented.
Yeah, wow. But my God, is that game hard?
Yeah,
even
absolutely.
harder in co-op as well. So you try and get a mate to help you out, but it's
makes it worse.
Yeah, it's just basically a boss rush game with a few levels in there as well. But yeah, I think
that
the only
that
reason
dragon
I wouldn't be
level
in my top 10 is just the dragon level is hell. Yeah, just one of the most aneurysm-inducing pieces of video gaming I've ever experienced. I wanted to die.
Right, hopefully I don't make the mistake I've been making before here, but Outer Worlds, the good Fallout 4.
Oh, 100%.
Because I'm sick of Bethesda making broken games.
Yeah.
Like, I have been for a while, but Outer Worlds have created a game that showed you that you can make a Fallout game that isn't broken, that isn't buggy as all hell, and story-wise, it's a lot more compelling as well. The characters are a lot more interesting and diverse. The artistic direction is a lot more engaging, and it's a cool game. It is a cool game that I fell off of, but I really should go back and finish it off.
Yeah, that's the biggest criticism I think you'll hear sort of across the board about Outer Worlds, is that it kind of loses steam towards the end.
Yeah.
And it's a real tight line that you have to walk with games like this, where you can give the player a manifesto that explains how you're going to give them all this freedom of choice and how things are going to affect the game world. And if people can pick enough holes in that and can call you out on not following through on what you've promised, it can really damage the game's reputation if that's what you're basing its reputation on, in terms of
absolutely.
Your decisions matter. Oh, you can beat the game in the first hour if you turn the guy in instead of whatever. And I think that's what kind of made people drop off towards the end, is it kind of felt like a lot of what you'd actually done was more arbitrary than you thought, which is a real shame, because it got everything else so right. Even the humor was good. The gunplay was good. As you said, the world was fun. There is so much to like about it. And I think really what Outer Worlds is, other than being a decent and a really good game, is hopefully a really good indicator of what Obsidian can do with more time and a bigger budget and more recognition, and keeping in this franchise's world and building upon that. I think something really special could come out of a potential sequel for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. I think we're now at the stage where we can be excited about Resident Evil again because of Resi 7. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Resident Evil 7 is a game that, based on the trailer and the demo, I was really angry with, because it really went against everything that that Resident Evil typically was. But at the same stretch, what Resident Evil had become by that point was a bloated, schlocky action B-movie pile of shit.
Yeah.
Because Resident Evil 6 is garbage.
Yeah, utter garbage. And I can't wait for our inevitable ranking of the Resident Evil games. So I'm really interested to see how that turns out.
Well, that implies that we're going to have to try and play that, and it's just, we'll have to do it co-op, because I can't do that alone. But Resident Evil 7 just astounded me with how closely it felt like Resident Evil, even though it really just wasn't anything like any of the other games, apart from maybe the last third where it got a little bit shooty. But certainly the beginning of that, the direction that they took it in, but managed to keep it feeling with enough of the kind of tropes of Resident Evil within it to keep it feeling like an actual proper entry in the series, was fantastic. And it was really, really terrifying, even though a lot of it, looking back on it now, was probably quite scripted and not as organic as it kind of makes itself appear to be. But just a really tight, solid fright fest from almost start to finish, like I say, other than dropping off in the end. I take it you've played it, have you?
Yeah, I liked it a good bit. I feel like the Resident Evil franchise is now in a nice place again. They have Resident Evil 7 and then The Village coming up, which is kind of doing the slow, plodding horror aspect to the game. But then they also have the slightly more actiony offshoot where they seem to be redoing the older ones of Resident Evil 2 and things like that, which are a bit more fast-paced in my experience. Yeah. And a bit more shooty. It just allows the franchise to almost have its cake and eat it. I think Resi 6 came along at a time where people thought that horror games couldn't be popular, which
true.
Which I think is wrong, because I think maybe the best Resident Evil, my favourite personally Resident Evil game ever, is Dead Space, which is another game that fell into the same. It felt Kimmy Cropper in the same way. The developers were forced to turn it into an action game, in which case they killed it. So they had a successful, profitable series that maybe wasn't a Fortnite, it maybe wasn't a Call of Duty, but it was a well-loved series that made money, and greed got in the way and ruined it. So it's nice to see that Resident Evil seems to be coming back to life, and Resident Evil 7 was the beginning of that. So
yeah, it was.
Great.
Yeah, the franchise as a whole is being taken care of really nicely at the moment.
Yeah.
Apart from that multiplayer on the Resident Evil 3 remake, but other than that, it's every direction that they've pushed and pulled it in for the last several games has been a really good direction that has
absolutely
served the franchise really nicely.
The next game we've got up is one I have mixed feelings on. I think
Same.
ultimately and objectively it's the best one in the series.
I don't think there's any question about that personally.
Yeah, I think there's moments in this game. I'm deliberately not saying what the game is yet, but there's moments in this game where the developer are unmatched in making action sequences of the ilk of a silly, schlocky action movie. In the same ilk as Indiana Jones. I may be giving it away slightly there.
Yeah.
But I think it's a game that maybe didn't need to happen. It's a game that the series was nicely wrapped up as it was. And although I think the story is probably the most compelling one they did, and maybe that says to me that there was a space for it, but it felt like it wasn't needed. And that's Uncharted 4.
Yeah.
I
actually didn't play the third one, so I don't know how that wrapped up. So
essentially, all is happy. Drake and Elena go off into the sunset together. That's it.
So to kind of, I mean, they obviously played into that fact from what I can remember of sort of dragging him back in for one more.
Yeah.
They even sort of played on the fact that he's done some bad shit in his life.
Yeah.
Which maybe not to the point that, the ludonarrative dissonance haters will say they should have done, but it's really hard to argue that you say, as you said, that Uncharted 4 did everything that the series does, probably to the peak of its powers.
Yeah.
It was, it handled the best. The shooting was the best. Graphically, it was absolutely unbelievable. The story was engaging. The characters and acting was as good as it always is. There's just, there was just a bit of burnout for it, I think, at that point, even though it's the only game of this generation we had. Yeah,
burnout's perfect. When we were doing previous podcasts, I think the Uncharted series was up there as one of my favourite. Uncharted 2 was where I absolutely lived and breathed that series, and 3 was another one of 2, and they finished it, and I was like, okay, and then I moved on, and then I just didn't have space in my attention span for another one that came along, and I actually only got to it this year, when I had a few years in fact to sort of decompress and get over it, and I thought, I need to see this through. So I did, and I'm glad I did, and it's a fantastic game. Just came too late for me.
I think it was also hampered by the fact that within its genre, that was one of the ones that got the biggest boom throughout this generation, and maybe the end of the last one with the return of the Tomb Raider series and Assassin's Creed, and almost every game started to put climbing in it. And after a while, there was just far too much of that kind of thing, and it was hard to differentiate between certain franchises at this point.
Absolutely,
but it's still the pinnacle. I don't think anything else does it quite like Uncharted does. There's just too much of everything else is still trying to do it.
Exactly. Super Mario Odyssey. Tell me about that.
I mean, it's a fantastic game. It really is just a richly varied, imaginative work of video games development.
I hate that Nintendo keep nailing it. It's over and over again. It winds me up because they show such contempt for their fans.
Oh yeah.
I find it so annoying, but also I cannot ignore the Super Mario games because they're always good.
Yeah, they are always
good.
Fantastic. They're so fun. They're so charming, and every time they take so long to make the proper ones these days. That every time they seem to be able to just come up with a completely new formula and just absolutely knock it out of the park. I just think the problem with Mario Odyssey is that maybe it was just a little bit too... It was too bloated with too many... There were so many things to collect that some of them were so easy that it never really seemed to build a difficulty spike that I would want from that type of game. It was just too much of a trundle along, having fun, doing, seeing different worlds or whatever, fun things to do with the cap transforming mechanic, which they did so many cool ideas with it that just there's just something about it that it just felt a little bit too long and a bit too. There was just something about it that just didn't quite click and make it as good as something like Galaxy or, well, I would say Mario 64, but recently having replayed that, I don't know if that's true either.
I'd agree with that, but I think you're right. It's a game that trundles along. There is late game stuff that is brutally hard, and I have lost countless 5-minute chunks of my life to watching Donkey play this game ludicrous levels. But it's a fantastic game, and another fantastic game. Can you give me a better superhero game than Spider-Man? Superman 64, obviously.
Or that Superman 3, the one where everyone uses that clip of them when you fail that quick time event and a woman strapped to that thing and she's like, I'm gonna die. Well, I suppose I'm still more of a Batman guy that I will.
Oh, that's right. I forgot they existed.
I struggle to put it above Arkham Asylum and City, but this, in terms of a Marvel property, I would say is probably their best video game representation ever. There are some cool ones back in the 16-bit era, but they're mostly kind of just sort of standard beat-em-up games. Whereas this, to follow on from that rose-tinted legacy that Spider-Man 2 got back in the GameCube, Xbox, and PS2 era, that's kind of hung over this franchise since then because no one's really got close to it. Or it's just never really quite felt as well perfected as that was. Whereas this, I remember when we were sort of started to see the marketing material for this, there was so many QTEs in it that everyone started to think it was just going to be really kind of cynical, and it wasn't going to be almost like a proper game. It was just going to be this QTE mess. But when you actually get down and play it, it's just the freedom of the web swinging. The combat is really tight. The story was actually quite good as well. I thought the acting in it was really good, and the kind of like RPG elements to it. Everything kind of added together to make, admittedly, another one of those open world games that has too much to do in it. It doesn't need to be there, which is again why it won't fit into our top 10 of the generation. But as far as you say, a superhero game goes, it is fantastic. It's another one I platinumed as well, I think. So I keep saying about these open world games have too much shit in them, and then I go do all of it anyway.
See, when you get to the point in open world games like this, for me, I don't know how you play them, but if I want to platinum a game like this, because I platinum Spider-Man 2 as well, I play through it and enjoy it, and then it becomes a podcast game.
Yes.
And that's what Spider-Man was good at. It had a decent superhero story. Yeah. It was fun to play, and then there was lots to do around the edges that were challenging, fun, and for the most part engaging. There were bits and pieces that maybe got a little bit long in the tooth, but for the most part it was a good game with a nice bit of variety. And have you played the new one on PS5?
I've played some. I've started playing it now.
Is it good?
It's basically the exact same sort of thing. You get a few more powers. There's some ray tracing, but it's more of a continuation really of this game. At the beginning of the new game, I've really struggled to enjoy the characters in it so far. It's all really sort of soft. Like everybody's just really nice to each other. Like Miles Morales is this really nice kid, and he's living with his mum, and there's a really nice relationship with her, and he's got a friend who's a girl, but they've never really got together yet, but they're just really good friends. And you're talking to Peter Parker, who's gone away on vacation, so you've got to take over the city for him, and there's all this back and forth between Miles and Peter Parker that's just a little bit too childish for me, and it's really quippy and sarcastic, and I'm struggling to enjoy that side of it. But in terms of flying around New York, kind of with the DualSense controller working its magic is really fun. But maybe this has got a little bit stale already, which is a shame.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't revere Hideo Kojima in the same way I think a lot of people do, but the story around Metal Gear Solid 5 is, I hope they write a book about it one day. Yeah. And looking at it, like the story was so far up its own ass, but then all Metal Gear Solid stories are.
Absolutely.
But to me, the gameplay is fantastic in Metal Gear Solid 5, and it's quite stunning that this game turned out as well as it did, considering the amount of disquiet that seemed to be going on in the background of the run up to the release of this game.
Yeah. It's another one of those games that probably more than any other game in the series up till now has taken itself so seriously whilst giving off game mechanics that are so just stupid on purpose, just to muck about with and have a laugh.
Yeah.
It was a real sort of dichotomy of the two things, but this is one of those games kind of like Hitman for me where I just don't feel I'm mechanically or even mentally good enough to play these games well, and I just end up getting frustrated at being bad at stealth.
Yeah, fair enough. I very much liked the makeup of this game and the fact that they had a big open world area and that you could plan your assault, and each mission took place in the same area in a different location, and you would just sort of plan your attack and you would scope areas out and then decide how you were going to approach different missions. And it's nice and open in a way that a lot of games aren't or weren't at the time that this game came out.
Mm-hmm.
The next one that we're going to talk about, and it's the final one that's not going to be in the running for our top 10 list, is Horizon Zero Dawn, which I guess, like, after having bashed Ghost of Tsushima for being another one of those open world games, I suppose actually, well, Horizon may be one of those, or maybe one of those if it was released today. However, it came at a time where we weren't so maybe exhausted by that genre of game, and it brought enough new things to the table with how you took down the enemies and things like that it did feel fresh. And I remember, although I couldn't tell you a single thing about it now, I remember actually really enjoying the story for Horizon. I just don't know anything about it anymore, which maybe says more than me saying I liked it does.
I think you platinumed this as well, didn't you?
I did, yeah.
Yeah. I never finished it. I actually did bounce off this one. So I think maybe if I'd have enjoyed it as much as you did, perhaps we'd probably be trying to push it into the top 10. But
it was hovering around there for me.
It's something I need to just completely start afresh on, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Okay, and that sort of rounds out the games that we spoke about, which were really, really standout games of the generation, but aren't under any circumstances going to make our top 10. Alex and I have come up with a list, and we've got 14 games here that we are going to try and break down into a top 10, and then we'll probably call it there for the podcast, and then we'll come back in the following podcast and order it and come up with a definitive order top 10 of the generation. So do you want to run through the games we've got, Alex?
I will do that indeed, sir. So the 14 that we've got, so David and I both made our own ranking of a top 10, and then so these are we've got 14 of them together from that. So obviously several of these are going to be shared between the two of us, and then there's going to be some outliers that only individuals have picked. So we've got Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, The Witcher 3, Red Dead Redemption 2, God of War, Bloodborne, The Last of Us 2, Apex Legends, Overwatch, Yakuza 0, Bayonetta 2, Forza Horizon 4, Sea of Thieves, Doom, and Resident Evil 2 Remake.
Yes.
So for the next sort of 20 minutes or so, I guess what we'll try and do is bring these down to an even 10, and then, as David said, we will rank them. We'll go through that arduous task of ranking and arguing and bargaining with each other next time to kind of get them all in there. I think so. If we look at what.
Yeah, I was going to say just to try and move it along. I think the obvious ones that are going to make the list is The Witcher 3, Legend of Zelda, God of War, Bloodborne, Overwatch, and then I think that's maybe half the list nailed down.
Apex is probably going to get in there.
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, so I would say we add those in and then see what we've got left, and then try and find spaces for other games, or if there's anything we feel very passionate about.
Okay.
Yeah, so we've got 6. So the 6 that are definitely going to make it in there: Legend of Zelda, Witcher 3, God of War, Bloodborne, Apex Legends, and Overwatch. Just to kick things off, I think I'm going to be on to a loser in terms of getting this to the top of the list, but I think Red Dead Redemption 2 should be on the list. Would be my first posit. I know you didn't. Would you go as far to say you didn't like it?
I would go that far, yeah.
Okay. Maybe I'm.
Oh, there's no reason why it can't be in there.
I feel like I'm trying to think of it as like a balanced list. I think looking at our two lists, not to give anything away, but I suspect I can see what the winner's going to be easily. However, this is probably, for me personally, one of my most seminal games ever. I played, and I think this is an argument that perhaps why it shouldn't win and won't win, beyond the fact that you don't like it, is that it took me a long time to get into it, but eventually when it clicked, and rather than trying to force the game to play how I wanted it to or expected a GTA-like game to play, once I sort of slowed myself down and started playing it how it wanted me to play it, I don't think I've ever been so attached and emotionally moved by characters in a game. It's a game that I can't think. There's other games that have been close, but this game actually brought me to tears, and I couldn't. To this day, I can't bring myself to engage with it in the same way as I have before, because I just don't have the emotional capacity to deal with it again. It is the best story that has ever been created in a video game. Like most video games, I used to always talk about in previous A Winner Is You podcasts about how video game story is what I like to play games for. But I read recently heard recently someone say, if video game stories are so good, why are they so forgettable? I.e., pick a game that was hailed as a great story and tell me about it. And quite often I've forgotten all about the story, which makes me think, whereas if I have the equivalent with movies, I can, like movies that have really affected me or really spoken to me, even years later I can tell you what they're about. There's quite often with video games I cannot tell you what Tomb Raider's about. Absolutely no idea.
That's very true.
For example, of a sort of fairly loved series.
I probably couldn't tell you what most of the Uncharted ones are about, other than he needs to find a treasure of some kind.
Yeah, I always say Indiana Jones, so in my head it is just Indiana Jones.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the obvious, retort to that is that they're fucking way longer. So there's going to be that. So you have to deal with 40 hours of story rather than 1.5. But that's a really good point. Because thinking about The Witcher 3, hailed for its story, I couldn't tell you a huge number of the beats from that story.
No, to be honest. My head. No, I remember being, again, that's another example of a game that I absolutely adored the story, and it's a story that probably has the chops, because it's got the depth, the political intrigue that rival some of the best books around, probably because it came from a book, but it is up there. But Red Dead Redemption is just, I've never cared about a horse in a game before. Never.
I mean, there's no, I think based on that, there's no way we even if I didn't like it, and we're going to take a break from this list anyway. Yeah. So maybe I've got time to get back into it.
I feel like, to be honest, I know that I've just sat and sung its praises, but I fully appreciate and understand why, if someone says they don't like it, why they don't like it. I totally get it, and I totally see it. It's just, as a pure personal preference, what bothers people about it doesn't bother me, and I was okay with it, and I was able to look past it and then have I feel like I'm being a bit dramatic, but genuinely a seminal experience with a video game. So if you don't like it, I don't think you're going to like it, and that's okay. It's not every game's for everyone.
That's true.
Tell me about. Let's have a look.
Yeah, we need to start thinking about cutting, don't we? Because we've got 7.
Yeah. So again, right,
let's talk about Sea of Thieves.
Okay.
Sea of Thieves is a game I came to quite late in its life, which is probably the best way to have come to it, other than the fact that any other ship will fuck me up immediately and ruin my fun. But the game is in a really good state now compared to the shit that it got at the beginning when it came out and was just barren of anything worthwhile to do. Yeah. I remember we did definitely try it at the beginning. Yeah, we did. And just kind of got really bored really quickly. But that has developed into one of the most fun co-op games I've played of this generation, without question. Yeah. I got really, really obsessed with it. And then it just seemed like me and my friends just all kind of got bored of the same thing at the same time. I think I tried to keep it going for a little bit, but even then I just sort of thought, what is the point? We're just going to get a better looking ship and then some dickheads are going to sink it anyway.
Yeah, I think that's probably for me the drawback is that the thinking behind it was sound, i.e. they didn't want to put anyone at a disadvantage. They wanted the people that were just picking the game up to have the same access to things as people that have played the game for 300 hours have.
Yeah.
Which makes sense, because actually it's a bit of an odd situation that you get in games, that the better you get at a game, the more heavily equipped you become, and essentially you just create an absolute disparity where the best players have the best things, and there's just no way to actually circumvent that. But the problem with it, I guess, meant that I'm not actually sure what you're supposed to be working towards, and the progression in it is painfully slow.
Oh God,
painfully slow.
They've tried to add things in recently where you can align yourself with one of the association things, and you can raise their banner, and you get more XP and more gold and everything for doing that.
Yeah.
But that also makes you a target, and then there's a certain faction you can join where sinking ships and stealing those banners gets you rep for them. So you just become bullied again. I think that is just the really unfortunate part of it. It has to be that way to be a pirate game. It has to involve screwing people over, stealing all their stuff, being an arsehole. But especially when they've now tried to add in story missions that take several hours of collaboration with friends that you've made especially now in, maybe this year's not the best example because we're all sat at home anyway, but in general modern life as an adult, you can't always guarantee that you're going to be able to get several friends together at a regular time all the time to be able to keep doing it. Mm-hmm. So if you've managed to get a group of mates together and you've gone on this long mission that's taken about 4 hours of all of your afternoons, and then someone comes along and sinks your ship as you're going to go turn it in and steals all your stuff.
Yeah.
And then afterwards you think about what you're even going to get from that stuff.
Probably nothing.
Yeah, you're doing story missions, but maybe it's just because my friends are completing it at bell ends, but every time we were doing it, they were just mucking about. Mm-hmm. So I'd be listening to the story while my mate would be getting drunk and throwing up on everybody in buckets and chucking it at stuff. So you're setting fire to us all and all this kind of stuff. So it's just... Yeah. It's a really fun game it actually definitely now feels... I can feel Rare's influence on it. Mm-hmm. It's nice to feel that about it, and it was really good. We played it all through the summer, me and my friends, this year when we were all stuck in lockdown, and we really enjoyed it. But will I ever go back to it again? No, because I can't think of a reason why I would do that.
Yeah, it's the jeopardy in it. When you were talking about like spending hours doing something and then losing it, the jeopardy in the game is both its biggest strength and its biggest weakness, because there is such risk in everything you do, and the longer you spend doing things, the greater the risk is that it's all going to go tits up. When that goes wrong, it's annoying, but the worst thing about it is it's disheartening, and you're like, what was the point in that? I've just lost an entire afternoon for nothing. But then when it comes off, there's nothing better. Like I've got memories of playing this with friends where we were collecting skulls, and then we got attacked and we had our ship sunk, and I lived, but my friend died, and because our ship sunk, I was stranded on an island, hiding from pirates that were looking for me with a collection of skulls that they knew I had. I was basically hiding them in bushes, and I was hiding in a bush while I spoke to my friend over game chat to try and direct him back to the island I was on, because he couldn't see me, obviously, because there's no markers you can put down in the game, so that we could sneak these skulls back onto our new ship and get away, which we did. And that is like a moment that I think we'll always remember in games, just because it was so much fun.
Yeah.
But on the flip of that, I've had things where you've had so much, again, like you're talking about, you've had so much money, so much loot, and then someone's just come along, sunk you and stole it. And it's just like, well, what is the point? And but at the end of the day, what is the point in doing it anyway? Because what am I working towards? What am I going to get for it?
You're going to get a different skin for your gun or your sails or whatever.
So
that is a way to, I guess, show your progress to everyone else who's playing the game.
Yeah,
you can look impressive and you can feel good about your progress in the game because it's visible to everyone. But at the end of the day, when it's purely cosmetic and the game mechanics themselves, in terms of the combat sort of your pirate, there's really not a lot of nuance to it. It's just kind of swing a sword or shoot a gun.
Yeah.
and eat some bananas or whatever. There's not really. There's like a really low level of skill, and then there's a somehow insanely high level of skill, and there's nothing in between.
Yeah.
And you can get into moments where you think you're doing okay and you're improving at the game, and you can get all of this teamwork together with all your friends, and you know how to do 180 U-turns in the ship, and you're getting treasure really quickly, and you're fighting off the Kraken, and then all of a sudden someone's going to board your ship, and you're going to get stuck in a loop, which we got in quite a few times, where you're just respawning to a ship that's on fire and getting shot in the face, and dying over and over again. And there's nothing fun about that, except for the people doing it to you.
Yep.
But we never were good enough to do that to anyone else, so I can't even be a good enough bastard in that game. I'm just a wussy, shitty pirate. We go get one box of treasure and immediately go turn it in because we're scared.
I'm feeling a cut for Sea of Thieves.
Yeah, but kudos to its water effects as well.
Oh yeah, and
gorgeous.
And they made using a boat really, really fun.
Oh yeah, it sounds simple on the surface, and it kind of is, but there's still when you get that synergy between your band of pirates and it's all working well, it feels great.
Yeah, and poor old Skull and Bones is probably never going to see the light of day because of this game.
Yeah. What a pile of shit that is. So, Doom 2016 was one of the best single-player games I think I've ever played, certainly as a shooter, which I know I said about Titanfall 2 as well.
Yep.
But I'm almost not going to fight for it to be in my top 10 because Doom Eternal was such a letdown and was so overly complicated for no reason that it soured my opinion of the original
strange,
Doom.
isn't it? Like, what was good about Doom and refreshing about Doom is it felt like it had been taken over and remade by people that were passionate about Doom and understood what was good about Doom. And then the new Doom Eternal came out, and it was like, oh no, you didn't understand, did you? It was really odd. It was like they went. It's almost like they nailed it and then forgot what made Doom 2016 so good. The simplicity of it, and they just made it too complicated.
Yeah, they did. They got carried away with themselves. So it was fine turned up to 10, but they had to push it to 11.
Yeah.
And 11 is not a real number in terms of volume. So they fucked it. There was too much parkour. There was too much weapon swapping. There was too much there was too much exploration, I think, in it. Yeah. And the first game just had enough of everything that it just felt so, as you said, refreshing, so tight and so well sculpted to be this exact kind of representation of what people remember as being fun about Doom. Whereas this now just became, just a different game almost altogether. Whereas the Doomslayer now is so badass and so revered that he's just become almost Duke Nukem-esque at this point. Everyone thinks he's amazing.
Absolutely.
I'm scared of him and stuff.
To try and sort of offer some like critique of it. For me personally, I think Doom 2016 overstayed its welcome a little bit. I think I got I got towards the end, and I was about 2 hours away from when it actually finished. I just wanted to get through it, and I just wanted to finish it. But up until the last 2 hours, perhaps it was fantastic.
Yeah, it's just a really exhilarating game that, just never really let up. It was just relentless. Yeah. And it's a shame to cut it, but at the same time, there's so many other games here we've got in this list that. Yeah.
So I mean, looking at it, I'm happy if you want to cut it. Because I've never played Yakuza or Bayonetta, so like. I'm interested. Let's move on to those next because I'm interested to hear your arguments for these.
I would fight for Yakuza 0 way harder than Bayonetta, obviously.
I mean, I think looking at our comparative lists in the same way that Red Dead 2 gets on the list, I think Yakuza has to be on the list because it's quite high up your personal list. But rather than just because that's not interesting for a podcast, tell me a bit about it.
I don't want to go into it too much because obviously we're going to build another episode off of this anyway. Fundamentally, it was a stroke of genius by the developers and Sega to create this prequel game based off of a series that started all the way back on the PS2 that was probably not as well received in the West. It was a very niche franchise. It was a very quirky one. And to start on anything that's come out on a even PS3 is, you're going to be confused. You're not going to understand what's going on. You're going to miss out on a lot of what makes it special.
Yeah.
So to create this prequel on the current, or the recently deceased generation of hardware, to have it be arguably the best game in the franchise anyway, is just a testament to how this series has got better and better with every version of it that they've made. And it opened my gaming taste up to this series of games that I have fallen completely in love with. I've played, since this came out, I've played 0, I've played the remakes of 1 and 2, I've played 3 remastered, I've played the fucking zombie spin-off, and I've played Judgment as well. So every time I play one of these games, and 7, I've been playing loads of 7 as well, on the new Xbox. So every time one of these games comes out, or I play one of these games, I enjoy every aspect of it so much. The stories are always really gripping, brilliantly acted, amazingly framed and directed, whereas the gameplay is fun and brutal. And then you've just got all these insane mini games, some of which are really addictive. You've got side quests that are absolutely ludicrous. The amount of stupid shit I could tell you about that you do in these games, it's just wacky nonsense. I could be here all day, and maybe next time I'll be here for a lot longer talking about it and try and remember some of the better ones. But it has elevated the Yakuza franchise above so many that I would have said I absolutely adored going forward. It's got right up to the top for me with everything like the Zeldas and Metroids and Marios and everything like that. It's right up there with, like you used to feel about franchises like Gears or Uncharted. That's where it is for me now, and Yakuza 0 is the reason why, because it's so good.
Get it on there. So
how many have we got?
I was going to say we've got 4 games left: 8. Resi 2 remake, Forza Horizon 4, Bayonetta 2, and The Last of Us 2, and we've got 2 slots. So do you want to offer one up for cutting? I'll start. I would happily see Forza Horizon 4 be cut.
Reluctantly would as well, purely because it's a game that I don't see myself not playing in the current generation for a start, because it's just but it's just it's another podcast game, isn't it? It's like it's like a Tetris effect where it's just so mechanically sound. It's such a relaxing thing to do, unless you're doing it co-op, as we found out, where it's therefore impossible to win any races ever. But it's just for me, it's the ultimate racing game for the last 15 years maybe.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've not enjoyed anything anywhere close to as much as this. I mean, the other Forza Horizon games are also fantastic.
Yep, absolutely. To me, this is. I mean, I think it was maybe there for a while, but this is where I really saw the Horizon series step out from the sort of mainline Forza Motorsport series and just become the premier racing game. To me, Forza Horizon 4 is the go-to racing game until the next one comes out. So yeah, it's the best in class. But you're right, it's just it's a podcast game, or it's a mess about with your mates game, or it's we've got some time to kill, let's just play this.
It's absolutely and it's absolutely I cannot listen to this with the sound on game, because every person in that game is an insipid moron, and every song in it is shit. Yep,
absolutely.
I would offer up, even though we made a big deal of it at the beginning, I'm actually going to offer up Bayonetta 2 for a cut, because well, number one, you haven't played it, and I just feel so strongly about how well Capcom remastered Resident Evil 2, a game I've wanted to be remastered since the GameCube remaster of the first one.
Yeah.
And I would really struggle to pick a Resident Evil game from the entire franchise that is better than that, and it's a franchise I absolutely love. Whereas Bayonetta 2 is incredible, but it's also a Wii U game, so I don't even know if it should actually count. I've got it on Switch as well, but
it's there. It's making it in. It's a shame. I'm glad it's on Switch, because it felt like being a Wii U game. It was a fantastic game, hamstrung by the platform it was sitting on.
100%. Yeah, 100%. And it is one of the most exhilarating, relentless games I've ever played, where I genuinely just did not want it to stop.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really disappointed when it ended. There was no burnout towards the end. There was no impossible difficulty spike that I found in the first game, is where I sort of hit a wall with it. Bayonetta 2 from start to finish was just nothing but enjoyable. There was no lulls in it whatsoever. But it's debatable if it's a last gen game and you've not played it. So I'm seeming. Where did you put Last of Us 2? Because of that, I think it has to kind of drop off because it was lower down in my list.
Sure. Okay, I'm happy with that, which gives us our top 10. I'll give you a quick run through of it, which we will come back to in the next episode to order definitively, so that you know for a fact which the best 10 generations are. 10 games of the generation are. We've got Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild, The Witcher 3, Red Dead Redemption 2, God of War, Bloodborne, The Last of Us 2, Apex Legends, Overwatch, Yakuza 0, and Resident Evil 2 Remake.
Pretty good.
Sorry Bayonetta 2, sorry Forza Horizon 4, sorry Sea of Thieves, and sorry Badoon 2016. You did not make the cut. You are resigned to the honourable mentions queue. So that gives us our top 10. I guess it also brings us to the end of episode 1 of the reincarnated A Winner Is You podcast. We don't have any socials or any sites or anything else to really plug at the moment, I don't think, because we're still we're at the point where we can record, but we're still at the nascent stage of how we're going to lay everything out. So hopefully that stuff will come in the future. But I guess what we can do now is we'll just talk about the game we're going to play first. So next episode, again, just to repeat myself, will be us ordering our top 10 and coming to a definitive best game of the generation. And then the following that, we'll move on to our Game Club episode. And the first game for that is going to be BioShock. So if you have that game or you have access to that game, start playing through so you can take part in the discussion.
Yeah.
And I guess that brings us to the end of episode 1. So thanks for listening. I have been David. He has been Alex. We have been the A Winner Is You podcast. And I'm out.
Keep gaming.
Oh, yes.